Hello, everyone. How are we? I'd like to first apologize to a couple of you for yelling at you over a short distance last night. That was my bad. But let's go from the start. Two puddles are lying in a gravel road. One turns and says to the other, "Hey, did you see that really light precipitation go past just now?" The other one goes, No, I must have missed it. Sorry. Jokes are pretty thin in the hydrology space, so I'm going to work on that over the next couple of years. Don't worry about that. The goal of this workshop was to talk about managing expectations, quality, quantity, resources, and resilience. So I'm going to try and cover as much of that as I can. We all in this room rely on data acquisition, on actually getting that information. It's the output of the technician's role. And we need to do it consistently and reliably. And it's the foundation of everything that follows. All the analysts, the modelers, the decision makers, they rely on that. So, one thing I've learnt while researching this topic is that the Queen's chain, or the King's chain as it's now called, is a rule of thumb. It's roughly 20 meters wide of how much land your regional councils typically regulate next to a river. But that's not everywhere. Turns out there's actually quite a lot of private landowners that can own out into the middle of the riverbed. There's a whole government agency called Herenga Anuku that has maps that will show you who owns rivers and where they are. So when you're trying to establish a site, like a brand new site, or get consent to go and progress some work that you need to do there, sometimes you have a little less authority than you might think. And as agents change, though, over time, as you might read there, the Ministry of Works eventually became the DSIR. In 1992, DSIR was sort of split up into state-owned enterprise, which is your Met Service, and like 6 or 7 CRIs as well, GNS, NIWA, and things like that. On the West Coast, a whole bunch of sites that we work with, we've kind of inherited from NIWA, because in 2014, they chose to stop collection at a bunch of sites to focus their resources on a few and doing those few really, really well. But yeah, you've got to sort of navigate this paperwork trail. As agencies change, so do the requirements. The policies, the standards, constraints, technology. We're in a dynamic industry. And trying to talk about the resilience of change of staff, of politicians, and of time. That's what we kind of need our sites to be able to do, right? So, I was an electrician before this, and the health and safety of that industry and this one is apples and oranges. It just didn't compare. I couldn't think of a dangerous thing that we do at all until I was doing a staff gauge reading, and a coworker was trying to come down from above me and kicked a cobblestone just smaller than my head, and it like splashed into the water next to me, and I was like, that could have hurt. So if you want managerial approval, one of the good things to do is take your boss out in his first couple of days and get him wet. They love that. But we have Grey River at Dobson. This is the closest site to Greymouth, the one that all the flood warning sort of comes into. And this is our blueprint of how we wanted to upgrade other sites. Because just getting down from the road to the river, most of our data collection relies on that simple ability, right? And we need to have those physical structures in place to do that safely. Because it turns out, for most of us field workers, Riverside is as much your workplace as your office is in terms of the Health and Safety at Work Act of 2015. That's just as deserving of investment as, your risk in the office. So, we want some steps. NIWA built these steps, and then it got finished off by a licensed builder, and it's pretty much we've got this rocky sort of shelf where the orifice lines go down, and then we've like kinked the pipe so it goes down a little bit further. And I guess one of the things that I want to sort of get over today is that every site has different geology, different topography, different physical, constructural methods of trying to make something sort of stay. For example, this site has a stilling well, or used to. We can upgrade encoders into radars, but if the river moves away 20 meters, that stilling well's high and dry. We've got several stilling wells around the west coast that are capped off and just not able to be used anymore. Vice versa, if the river comes 20 meters towards you, goodbye stilling well. Like it's, yeah. These structures that we put in to be stationary and to get us stationarity, they don't always last. So we still have 2 stilling wells for now. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, so this has a little platform that you get down to. It's just fabricated metal, and handrails is all pre-purchasable. You just Allen keys, lock them together, a little bit of Meccano. But this is what we sort of took as the design philosophy. This was the site that we thought had it sorted out, had it figured out. This was the site that the rock nearly hit me at, so this was the first challenge. We've got a bunch of spurs along the edge there that were kind of just thrown off the back of a dump truck by the farmer. This was not strategically placed, as they say. And on the tip of one of those spurs, this is not working. Yeah, so that's our site access. That's where some of you saw the kayak that we had yesterday. We got to like put our gear in the kayak and cart it down here and then set it up in the river. This has got about a 4-meter verticality to it. And as you see, like it's sort of crumbling. It's falling away. Yeah. So before I started, went and put this little concrete plinth on the side, just some corrugated iron as a sluice to shoot your concrete down from the top. They had a lot of fun doing it, I'm sure. And but that little concrete wart on the nose of this spur, it was, yeah, not long for this world, shall we say. Again, everything's crumbling around it. So the decision had to kind of be made. Do we keep the site, or do we try and find somewhere else? We tried to find somewhere else. There's not much around. And also, this is like the only site on our whole network that has low flow consents on it. So maintaining engaging here was fairly important for us. So looks like we got to upgrade, which is cool. So I talked to a few people, and we got 150 tons of rock thrown in there, and that's it. Turns out 150 tons of rock is not much. Who knew? We'll talk about that. So that still was too steep. We ended up having to get the digger back in and choose where to relocate. Water quality also had a say in this because they had information on the side of that concrete plinth too. So I was thinking, oh, well, we could just launch our boats in this little like shallow pool here and maybe have our staff gauge and our instruments going into this little pool. But turns out that spurs are kind of designed to self-heal. Once they settle in, every fresh that comes through will take out smaller bits of sediment or deposit more. And even if you put a staff gauge on a really big rock, it's no guarantee that staff gauge is going to stay stable. It's probably going to move a bit. So that idea went down the drain. Oh well. So this is what we did. We got a digger in. We put some stuff to stop cows getting too close, and did a bunch of upgrades. Basically, we got concrete in. We spent about 2 weeks, I think it was, to sort this out. Used the rain gauge fence as a temporary benchmark because all the previous benchmarks got wiped out by the digger rumbling through. And yeah, this little platform at the bottom here is detached from the rest of that staircase that you saw, so that if it gets wiped out by John Ellis calls a blunt object trauma device, a big tree, it will hopefully leave a lot of structure intact so that we will still be able to go and put something back in future. Same reason for that corner being cut off, bit of an angle there. So this is most of the way, but still getting our Q-boat or our kayak or whatever we might be using in at that spot, not too easy. So maybe still a little bit more to go. And after a bit of high waters, it gets fully covered in debris, so I've got to sweep that all off too. Just for fun. So, that was Mawherete. We had a lot of learnings from that one. And I'd just like to add as well that we had a break in our network. Network died, and we went, oh, well, everything's pretty much lined up for that digger to come in. Let's just make that happen. It'll only be a week's gap, if that, maybe 2. What was supposed to be a 2-week gap turned into 4.81 months. Because it turns out that that first idea wasn't appropriate. We needed different advice and different managers to say, yes, do it. We also then took management and HR to site to show them that, hey, this is what we can do instead of trying to get other contractors in. If you allow us to do so, this is what we can achieve. And they said, yeah, that looks great. We trust that. And so having that trust, it goes a long way. We tried to put some hobos in, some piezo's, to stitch on to the data record to try and like reduce the gap. But an experience shone through again. And it turns out if you have too many things being recorded, it clogs up the memory pretty quick. And so the piezo ran out of memory 2 weeks before we actually finished getting a bubbler in once again. Just go, that was great. Anyway, next site, this is Ananghua River at Landing. You got a fairly thin, fairly steep rock slope that we're sort of sitting on there. Old Stilling Well Tower that is still in use, that's still good and functional. The ladder has been removed now, you'll see that in one of the last slides, repurposed. And yeah, once again, we have a lot of problems here. So this was the catwalk when I first started in 2020, and it's a hell of a good thing that it got upgraded. It cost about $30,000 to upgrade it. To this, you can see it got a little bit more robust. And thank you to a civilian flood hunter for this photo. That is that catwalk and that Stilling Well Tower. Cool, huh? So, our recording device, our logger and everything is in a box on a pole. You can sort of see that to the right. So, everything else is dug in underground to it. Thank you. So it's quite deep, about 1.5 meters. It's hard. Can you guys just go through like one slide every like 8 seconds from now? Great. Okay. So we went and did some work. Mixed a batch, used this little flume that we built on the day to just pour it down the bank. And Chef Ruben was cooking up a batch up the top. Drilled in, put rebar to keep the steps where they are. Into that rocky face that you'd seen before. At the top, we're going to put more of those metal steps in. Really, really simple. You just bolt them from the sides of those wooden runners. Really nice. So handrails, we've got yellow, like grippy fiberglass anti-slip things there. But this again is only really like phase 1, maybe phase 2 finished. We still have to get the interface of the actual water, how we lower stuff down without ropes or falling in, sorted out. So the next site, Buller River at Wolf's. This is trying to stabilize sand and probably 50 years ago someone's rubbish dump. It's like the second oldest site on our network. I think it was back in the 70s, as far as I can tell. Yeah, when you've got concrete that's there and everything around it starts to get eaten out and eroded away, your staff gauge is slumped. It falls away. It's not reliable. It's no good. So you've got to come up with something. These are just pictures of that. So yeah, you can see it getting undercut there. This is again also about a 5.5 meter vertical from up where we can access. There's the old Stirling Well Tower you can see there, down to the water level. So it's a really, really steep site. This is what it looked like after someone put some wooden steps in there. We wanted to do better and needed to, because again, if we have to survey in our instrument every time, that gets annoying real quick, especially when you forget stuff. Can we just go back once? Can we go back once? Yeah, stop there, please. So I contacted an engineer, and he contacted a construction company, and they came up with this idea, which is getting 9 concrete blocks helicoptered in, placed on site with catwalks in between and ladders to make it all happen. It was about $60,000 to say yes to that work. Can I get a show of hands just from anyone? Would anyone pay 60 grand for like access to their site? One. Hey, one. Okay. Work for him. Yeah. All right. And platypus ground anchors to get everything in. That's fine. We, by this point, had that trust from management to go ahead and do better. So this was a shitty electric fence until we put real things in, but cattle and sheep are in here all the time, and well, we only replaced that box like a month ago. It had a giant dent for the last 4 years. This is what we've got now. We've got a new style. Once again, you'll see these metal steps, handrails locked in. There's still a bit of a work in progress here, down to a platform, a bit of a landing, and then down again to sort of like a diving board, really. And then there's that ladder from the other site that we've just repurposed and concreted in. So that is about 100 bags of concrete. At a very, very low flow, we kind of just stabbed them and then put them in situ, so when the river came up or whatever atmospheric moisture would harden it. And that's our current setup of how we're going to try and stabilize or put a block in that's not going to move, or, well, we'll see what happens, I guess. So far, this is about 90% done and has cost us 16 grand. So a little better, I guess. Oh yeah, I just wanted to say as well, so in that Mawhareti one, that one first sort of mentioned about it being the cobblestones coming down, that was $15,000 just for like the earthworks and the rock, and $10,000 for everything that we'd done after that with the construction materials. I don't know about labour. Don't ask me about labour. That's another thing. Thank you. Thanks.